Getting started with the electric bass. This is part 5, and this will cover the action and the fretting hand.
Okay, in this lesson, guys, I want to talk about the action. It might be a term that you hear people use, or they want to alter their action, or their action is too high, or their action is too low, or they don't know which kind of action to go for. Action is how far the string is from the fretboard, okay? How far the string is from the fretboard, and how far you have to push down before you make contact. If it's a really high action and the string's way off the fingerboard, you're going to have to press down a lot before it meets the fret, before you start fretting the note, okay? Whereas a low action, you're not going to have to press down as much. It's going to be a bit easier. In fact, it's going to be a lot easier to press that down, okay? As we talked about when we looked at the lesson where we were covering in the bridge, you can alter the action by these little grub screws here, these little Allen screws, or Allen bolts. But for that, if you want to get into that, you should check out the Bass Maintenance and Setup Guide by Chris May. Now, so now we know what the action is. I suppose you're thinking, well, do I want a low action or a high action or a medium action, okay? And the truth of the matter is that it depends. What I would really recommend is staying away from a super high action, because although tonally sometimes it sounds quite cool, if it's too high, it's going to put you in, you're going to be in danger of injuring your hands, tendinitis and repetitive strain injury and all of that kind of stuff. This is hard enough, so we don't need that to be part of our lives at all, okay? Then ultimately, as well, if we have a really low action, sometimes the strings themselves start buzzing and you'll get this kind of thing. Hear it buzzing there? Like I'm mimicking that, I'm making that happen myself. But that if your action is too low, that can happen, and it also affects the tone of the instrument as well. I like to go for a medium action, and in the Bass Maintenance and Setup Guide we do talk about that, or Chris May talks about that. But if you taking into mind that you might have just started out on bass, your instrument, you might have bought a cheap-ish instrument, maybe like $200, $300, $400, $500. It's worth bearing in mind that with mass-produced instruments, there hasn't been enough time spent on the setup, which is, when somebody says, oh, I'm getting my bass set up, it means that they're getting the action altered, it means that they're getting the intonation altered, new set of strings, all of that kind of jazz, right? So, and in the factory, because it's a mass-produced instrument, sometimes they manufacture the instrument and then they get it out the door as fast as possible, and a lot of the time for as cheap as possible, okay? So they haven't really had the time to spend the right amount of effort into getting a really nice action. And their way of getting around this is to just put, have a huge action. Because if they set the action to be quite big, it means none of the notes are going to buzz, okay? The lower the action, the more likely the notes are to buzz. So it really needs somebody to, give the bass a bit of care and attention to make sure the action is nice and, medium to low, but with all of the notes ringing out really nicely. Now, to do that, you can check out the Bass Maintenance and Setup Guide, or if that's way out of your comfort zone, you could just take it to your local guitar shop, and they've probably got a guitar tech working there that will be able to set the action for you. So I do recommend either checking out that course or taking it to your local guitar tech or guitar shop and get them to take a look at it, and at least have a look at the action and give you a heads up whether it's a little high or not, because we want to make this. I want to make this as easy as possible for you. I want to, I'm all for this, the path of least resistance, and getting that action right and not too high is a real critical part of making the learning process of getting into bass a lot easier.
Next, the fretting hand technique.
Okay, so now we know about all the different parts of the instrument. We know this is the body, the bridge, the pickups, the controls, the neck, the fretboard, the frets, the machine heads. I want to talk about making a noise out of it. I want to talk about what's called fretting a note. Fretting a note, okay? And we do that, and we alter the pitch of the strings by holding down the strings at different points along the fretboard, right? So that's an open E. So put that there. It's an F. I don't even want you to think about notes yet, right? I don't like note names. I just want you to get into the physicality of actually making these sounds, okay? Making the sound and making sure they're really nice and clean, okay? Now, to do that, all you need to do is press the string down against one of the frets. And what you want to do, which is really critical, is when you fret the note, is make sure that your finger is just behind the fret. Just behind. You do not want the finger to be in the middle, okay? Because if it's in the middle of the fret, if I move slightly this way, it's going to start buzzing, okay? So if you ever pick up your bass and you're getting notes like this, it's probably because you're fretting the note in the wrong position, okay? Now if I roll it over here, so it's right behind the fret, the note's super clear. So if I'm playing something like this, you'll see that all my fingers are right behind the fret. Okay, so you really want to aim to get your fingers right behind the fret and get as clear a note as possible. If you do get any buzzing, it's going to be because your finger is too far towards the headstock, okay? Headstock in the machine heads up here, it's going to be too far that way. So make sure it's right behind the fret.